Welcome back to the BHAW Radio Army Wrestling Podcast. I am your host today, Brian Rowan. I'm leading this one. Jordan Tom is on a family vacation. He is mid-flight right now, so we have guest on the show, or guest host on the show, Chandler Smith. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to get the chance to hang with you and one of the greats. Thanks for letting me hang out. I'll try not to be as bad as Jordan is on a week-to-week basis.
Appreciate that. So today we got a great episode coming for you. We got 2005 graduate Phil Simpson. We've got a laundry list of accolades. Hopefully we can get through them all in this episode. But he was a 4-time Tennessee State champ, 4-time Mike Natvig Award recipient, Wally Crum Award recipient, 3-time NCAA All-American, 2005 NCAA finalist, 2012 UAM champion, and 2012 Olympic trials qualifier. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how's your Christmas going so far?
It's going great. You know me, many people know me. I'm from a big family, so it's blissful chaos around the Simpson household, and so it's always a lot of fun. Always a lot of fun.
How many kids do you have now? I can't keep track. Somewhere between 6.
I have 8. Believe it or not, I got 4 boys, 4 girls. Yeah, I mean 8 the last time I checked. I haven't talked to my wife in a few minutes, but last time we checked, we had 8. So.
You got squad leader kind of formation?
Yeah. John Phillip is the oldest. Yeah, he's kind of the squad leader, and then we got a couple little team leaders. I'd my oldest daughter Amelia. She's a big helper around the house, and so I'd probably give her that title.
I remember seeing a couple years ago you all did the 7 Dwarves as a Halloween costume. Is there a football team planned in the works and like a rugby squad, 15 aside, maybe planned?
Yeah, we're open to any ideas. We've outgrown so many of the themes that we've enjoyed doing in the past, and so we snuck that one in. Snow White and the 7 Dwarves, and so. We're open to ideas and suggestions. This year we had our 8th little girl Edith, and right before Halloween, and so we didn't get the theme, and so we just kind of let them do their own thing. But they were actually pretty disappointed because they enjoy kind of doing something together. But yeah, I'm open for suggestions.
So continue on that. Our first question. So. Growing up as the oldest of 5 brothers, I guess let's dive into some of the epic battles you've seen. As the oldest brother, you probably witnessed and probably remember maybe more so than the other brothers. What's the best memory or some of the things growing up in the Simpson household, and how did your family just get into wrestling?
Yeah, so my dad is a coach, high school coach, and so I think we kind of were born into it a little bit. My mom would take us to the matches when we were real little, and me and my brother Patrick are about really just 15 months apart, and so we were really close in age. And then William, or Willie, as some of you guys know him, was just right behind. So having 3 boys really close in age, kind of, just naturally we gravitated towards roughhousing, and I guess wrestling is just really organized roughhousing to some degree, and so we kind of grew up around it, just going to watch my dad coach at his matches and tournaments, and I remember my dad taking us to some of the tournaments, and we would be under the bleachers, we were just gym rats, but we would be there all day long. And we'd watch wrestling in between sessions. We'd run out there and wrestle each other and wrestle random kids that we found. And, so we're just always around it and immersed at a very early age. So that's kind of how we started, but we probably didn't have any real organized wrestling practices until we got probably quite a bit older. So.
What were some of the? You remember any epic battles between?
Oh man,
being so close, Willie probably not.
Well, I would say there probably wasn't any that were not epic, because I think we were really competitive people. So between me and particularly Patrick was nice because he could come up for a challenge and wrestle me, or he could go down and whoop up on old Willie Bones. And so so he kind of he could go either way. So I probably primarily wrestled Patrick, but I would wrestle William occasionally. But probably every time we wrestled was epic. I mean, lampshades were getting broken. We were getting hurt. You know, it was, I mean, we broke so many things in the house, and I mean, you can only hide so many, you know, those things. But I think we were fortunate. I think my mom at an early age knew that we were just going to be like that. And so she lowered her expectations for some sort of organized household. And so she kind of, I wouldn't say let us, because, you know, she would always tell us to, you know, go outside or do something, but we always found ourselves inside in the den, wrestling on the carpet and fight. I mean, it always ended in a fight, but we didn't fight like most kids. We didn't punch or do things like that. It was, our fighting was, you know, elbows to the back of the head, or a unruly little deep butt drag that was maybe, you know, on purpose. You know, you just do things to make the other person mad. And so that's how we would fight. So literally everyone was like that. I mean, specific memories. Man, I remember probably one time we used to get amateur wrestling news magazines in the mail to follow the rankings when I was younger. And I loved Iowa just because of Dan Gable. And I read his book when I was a kid. And I think I finally got to watch Iowa wrestling, because we didn't have YouTube back then. So it wasn't like you had access or wrestling. We didn't have access to a lot of this stuff. So occasionally we would get recorded VHSs of like a college match or something. And so I remember watching Iowa one time, and me and Patrick decided we were going to wrestle Gable style. And I remember we were just hammering each other at, like, no technique, nothing, and just hurting each other. And my dad came in and was like, yeah, just banging each other for no reason. Like, just to do, we're like, oh, we're Iowa. We're going to wrestle like Iowa. We're just banging each other. And I remember my dad being like, what are you doing? That's not even wrestling. And it was like, well, that's what Iowa does. And they're really good. But, you know, I just remember just literally just banging each other so hard. And just thinking like this, after my dad brought that up, I remember thinking that was probably stupid. I don't know what we accomplished.
Years later, not much has changed in Iowa.
I tell you, I will say this: some of the we were so competitive, but William was just a lot younger than me and smaller, and so I'd kind of take it easy on him. My dad would tell me not to use my weight or strength on him, but man, William was really slick, and every once in a while he would pull something out and just make you feel really stupid, and you kind of be like, where did that come from? And I don't know if he even knew where that came from. It was just these random moments where, like, you would really get embarrassed, and you were like, that's when I would, like, lose it and then turn it on and use my strength and weight and get in trouble because he would get hurt. But he had some really interesting ones that I remember he would just throw us or something crazy, and it would be like, okay, it's on.
Probably call him Slick Willie.
Yeah.
So you also have 5 sisters. So, I don't know. I don't think they ever formally got involved in wrestling, but I'm sure that they were involved in some of these battles. They were.
Oh man, yeah. So when most people that know us, they see our sisters, and you know they're girly, and you know you wouldn't see that side of them, but in the house, man, my sisters were really good, really tough. Every one of them had kind of their own unique toughness about them. And specifically, I could go down the list. It'd probably be really embarrassing for my sisters to hear this, but my sister Christine was like really strong. She had this crazy strength that I think most people would not assume she had. My sister Bridget was kind of crazy. very aggressive, and but they all like they never practiced. They would just jump in and just mess with us, or they'd wrestle each other, and you just kind of underestimate them. But they watched so many matches. They probably had more wrestling knowledge than most guys in high school. They just had seen it so much, and so occasionally when they would wrestle, you'd be like, where did you learn that? Oh my gosh. So we did. So, having all brothers, we like to pretend like we were protecting them and kind of keeping the guys at bay. But honestly, they would have been able to handle themselves 10 times over if they ever needed to. So, but yeah, they were really tough, really tough. And women's wrestling just wasn't popular back then. There was not that many opportunities. And I think, with just a little bit old school style thinking, I think nobody would have wanted to probably try to wrestle my sisters anyways, because they would have been staring across 5 brothers and a wrestling coach. So a little intimidating.
To that point, so I know it must have been pretty cool for you to get the chance to wrestle for your father and with your brothers in high school. You had a super successful high school career as a 4-time, Tennessee state champion. Can you just tell us about some of the memories of high school wrestling and what you did to be one of the best wrestlers in Tennessee state history? And I also want to hear if you were, I know you think you were a contemporary of Coach Ward's. If you ever heard of him, he once told me if you weren't from Saudi, that you weren't nobody, and you were not from Saudi, Daisy. So I just wanted to hear, if there was any of you guys ever got the chance to scrap with him or knew about him growing up.
Yeah, before I get to that Chattanooga arrogance, I'll talk a little bit about my high school. So I don't know, I guess being from Tennessee, we didn't have a lot of exposure to a lot of things back then. And so I didn't really know what was out there. And so, kind of the world was smaller then, especially in the wrestling community. And so the few things that we had were like Foxcatcher, newsletter, amateur wrestling news. And so I would read articles and things like that. And so that's kind of how the only outside of Tennessee was what I had. And then my dad was pretty connected to a couple different things. So Tennessee was just small. And so it was easy to be probably a bigger fish in a small pond. Most kids probably didn't start wrestling in Tennessee until they were in middle school or high school. That was probably the first real opportunity, because year-round wrestling was not popular back then. There just wasn't any clubs. The club systems didn't really exist. And so you had a few USA wrestling events in the springtime, I would say. So you'd have a few tournaments that we'd go to. And so as a kid, I probably had so much more hours of wrestling, even though even though they weren't like practices. I would just show up at tournaments and we'd wrestle. That was it. And so we had an advantage on that end. We were so far more advanced for where we in Tennessee than a lot of these kids. And so that early success probably breeded more success and probably gave me it's fun to win. Nobody likes losing. And so for me, I enjoyed that and enjoyed dreaming about being one of the best. And so I just kept, as I grew and got to different levels, it just kept feeding off of it, I think. And so, yeah, so when I was in high school, I was already, at that point, I was watching a lot of film that I was getting from a couple of different people on NCAAs, and I was picking up on a lot of the different technique. When you're from New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and you're like Brian Rowan, you get to be an encyclopedia of all the kind of the technique and the ways of things coming in, and wrestling evolves. That's one of the really neat things about wrestling is it continually evolves, and you start seeing kids do these crazy things and the techniques. And, so I didn't have that exposure probably until I started getting into high school. And so I think that really helped me, because I was doing things that other kids had never seen. Me and Patrick and William, we just were probably way more advanced for Tennessee wrestling. So that probably made it easier. I don't think I would have had probably the same success if I would have been in a different state early on, because I think the playing field would have been a little bit more level. But so it kind of, Tennessee fit me, I was a late bloomer, so it wasn't like I was extremely physically gifted. I just was probably more advanced in just knowing wrestling and knowing positions. But yeah, so let me talk a little bit about that kid from Saudi Daisy, Kevin Ward. So Kevin was really good. He was one of those kids too, that there was a handful of us that grew up wrestling at an early age. I don't know how he got into it, but I remember he was really good. And he had some really good technique, and we would see each other at, the few freestyle tournaments that we would go to. And then we'd go to the Southeastern regionals. And so I'd see him there, and because there's not a lot of Tennessee wrestlers, you kind of like, oh, it's like, the few, the proud. And I remember he used to have a really nasty boot scoop. And I for some reason I could never hit that. And I just remember thinking like, oh, he's so good. I wrestled one time. And some of those tournaments, you just wouldn't have a lot of kids. So at the very end of the tournament, they would kind of open it up to like, if you wanted to challenge another kid at a different weight class or a different age group, you could. And I'm not sure if I wanted to challenge Kevin or if my dad was like, you're going to wrestle this kid, Kevin Ward. Anyways, he about broke me in half. He did a crotch lift and on the wrong side of my body. And so like, I kind of was turned the wrong way and ended up having to medically forfeit, which was probably good for me. Cause he was probably going to beat me. He was good. We were probably in 6th or 7th grade, but funny story. I knew him and, remember watching him. And as we got older, we got to be a little bit closer just because I think we both recognized that we were going to wrestle at the next level, and we were both pretty good. And he was always a little bit heavier than me, but, yeah, we both ended up going to actually the only reason why I ended up at West Point really was because of him, because he was walking around with an Oklahoma bag. And I remember thinking like, oh, okay, if Kevin's looking at Oklahoma, I should probably look at Oklahoma too. And that's how I ended up going to a wrestling camp in the summer. And the assistant coach at Oklahoma at the time was Chuck Barbee. And so that's how I met Chuck Barbee. And then we can fast forward, but Kevin should have joined me at West Point. We went on the same recruiting trip to West Point. I thought he was coming with me, and then he okey-doked out to Oklahoma State last second and left me hanging. But it all worked out. Now look at him.
I'd say things have turned out pretty well for both of y'all, and it's cool to hear how that's kind of come full circle.
Yeah, he was on a really good team. He was part of we had kind of an interesting group of kids that were really good coming up our age range. And there was Saudi did have a couple of bodies there that were pretty tough. And so he was one of them for sure. Chattanooga has an advantage because of UTC. Nashville, we're just a bunch of rednecks trying to learn how to wrestle. But UTC having the college program right there really helped them.
So what other programs were you interested in? Obviously, you developed that relationship with Chuck, and was it like your sophomore, junior year? Like, what other schools were you interested in, or was it like wherever Chuck was at, I was going there, and I didn't really talk to anybody else?
No, I wanted to go to Iowa. That was my dream school. That was, as a kid, that's just what I think every kid, if you followed wrestling, you wanted to go to the best, and that was Iowa for me. But I sent in I made a homemade, man, I'm really feeling old now talking about this.
I did the same thing.
God, these kids these days, they have all this like really slick video. They don't even probably have to put it together. You got these services that do it, and then you got Flow Wrestling. I mean, Track Wrestling, Flow Wrestling, all these places that do it. But I had to take one of those VHS recorders and that had dual cassettes, and so like you would play one and then you could record and stop recording while the other one was playing. And so I had to do a homemade highlight tape and send it to a couple of coaches, because no one really followed Tennessee wrestling, and I didn't go to Fargo until I was junior, so I probably didn't go to enough tournaments to get exposed at the level I needed to get recruited at a high level. But I did go to a couple, and so I put together some film. I sent it to Iowa, and I think the feedback that I heard was I was too skinny and not kind of their style, not built the way they have. And so I was a little disappointed. The first one was when Dan Gable retired, literally my junior year. I told him when I was a kid, I met him, and I told him I was going to wrestle for him one day, and then he decided to retire before I got to college. So I didn't get recruited there, and that was a bummer for me. And I went to Oklahoma my junior year, and so they kind of started just contacting me. But the ones at Nebraska contacted me, Mark Manning when he first got there, and then Missouri, obviously with Brian Smith, that was probably the one that recruited me the most. And then Rob Cole at Cornell, that was another one that I early on, and then Harvard was another one early on that I had kind of looked at. But yeah, it was interesting because Missouri was the one that I was the closest to outside of West Point. But Coach Barbee, when I went to the Oklahoma camp, he was just a far superior technician. And I remember I kind of gravitated to him during that camp because his attention to some of the details were just incredible. And so I being a wrestling junkie, just really liked that and was attracted to that. So when he called me, I was going crazy. I was like, yeah, Oklahoma's calling me. And he was like, well, I'm actually at West Point. I was like, oh. It's like, isn't that like a military school? You do like push-ups and stuff? And he's like, yeah, kind of, sort of. I was pretty disheartened by that at first, but yeah, so that was that. Outside of him calling me when he got to West Point, it was really Missouri until senior nationals. I went to senior nationals and got second, and then Oklahoma State started calling, but I didn't get blinded by the light. I was already kind of had a chip on my shoulder that no one really recruited me, and so I was like, not going there.
So fast forward now a little bit to your plebe year. You know, you almost had like immediate success. I didn't even realize this until I was like looking through it. I thought kind of like your sophomore year, you kind of emerged and like not out of nowhere took third, but like, and I was looking back, and I was like, wow, you were like the 10 seed your plebe year, lost in the round of 12 in a close match. So you were there. You know, did you have that success like right away at West Point? Like, did you know like, hey, I'm at that level now? Or kind of talk about your plebe year a little bit.
Yeah, so I think there's two pieces of it. One, I was a dreamer. So even when I was a senior in high school, I had this itch and desire and this dream of being in NCAAs and being a national champion. And it was like Kel Sanderson was doing his thing at Iowa State. And so it was just like he was kind of revolutionizing the way people saw wrestling. And I remember I was like, man, that's going to be me. I'm going to be a 4-timer. I'm going to, so I had this kind of dream in the background, but realistically, I was physically not there. I was just a slow grower. So I didn't really probably even late bloomer. Let's just say that. I think all Simpsons were kind of late bloomers. And so I was very physically probably not prepared, maybe not even until I'm like my junior year. So that was a big change for me. So realistically, I probably had a lot of growing that I needed to do, but I think what allowed me to have success early on was just how much I hated losing. I hate losing probably more than I ever enjoyed winning. I couldn't tell you what I did on some of the matches that I won, but I could probably tell you just about every match I lost. And so I feel like those things haunt me. And so, I think what made me competitive, I knew I wasn't good on my feet. I was really good on the mat when I first came in. And so I probably made a lot of, the success I had was on the mat. And for my feet, I had to compensate for not being as quick or strong with my hips by headbutting guys a lot. So literally I wasn't strong. I physically just was not there yet. And so, and I didn't move. I didn't move on my feet very well. And so I learned really quickly that if I didn't slow guys down, that I was going to get exposed. And so off the whistle, I would kind of lead with my head really, really quickly. Like kind of bull rush them. And it was a little bit of I'd call it a legal headbutt, because they could have avoided if they just got their face out of the way. But what that usually did was it kind of, I think, caught people off guard a little bit. Nobody is expecting somebody to headbutt them in the first second of a match, but literally that became kind of my strategy, was like I had to kind of slow them down a little bit. And that was one way I could kind of knock people off the horse a little bit and slow them down so that they would have to wrestle my pace. I could scramble really well. And so if people got to my legs, I could scramble. But if somebody got to my legs and blew through me, I didn't have a chance. I didn't have good position. I wasn't strong enough. And so because I hated losing so much, I was very gritty, and that was probably actually the toughest I've ever been at wrestling. Physically, I was probably a lot meaner my freshman year than I ever was any other year, because that was what I had to do to win. I had to be mean. I just had to, that was it. My success my freshman year was kind of a snowball. I started out, no one knew who I was. First tournament, I pinned a kid named Nate Parker, who was who had transferred from Penn State to Oklahoma, and he was ranked. And so it was the first time I was like, okay, well, I can beat ranked guys. I kind of caught him a little bit in a wrist and half, which people underestimate, and I had a pretty good wrist and half. But then as the season got on, I started getting better at not necessarily catching people, but just, again, slowing matches down and keeping it within. My whole goal was to frustrate people and wear them down, and then I could score points on top, or at least allow myself to put myself in a position where I could score late in the match, because I couldn't score early on. Just people were too good. And so that was a little bit of my strategy. But as the season got on, I got better at the strategy piece and knowing when to pick and choose, taking risky shots or trying to score points. And so I just got better at developing that. And I knew the matches that I had to keep close and try to win in certain areas, positions, and then the matches that I could go out there and let it go. And it wasn't until my sophomore year that I was just like, I'm just going to go score a bunch of points. But freshman year was hard. It was a beatdown. You guys all know just the physical toll it takes on you going from high school to college wrestling is enough. And then you throw in West Point and, all that stuff in there. And I remember my practice partners my classmates were probably in the same boat as me physically and just learning. But we had a senior firstie, Eric Miller, and he wasn't like the best technician, but he was just a workhorse. And man, I remember parts of the season where I just was like, he physically manhandled me. And that was tough. That was hard. But that prepared me probably. I mean, that was what I was facing when I was in competition against the top guys. They were just physically mature and strong.
Yeah, the difference between an 18 and 22-year-old or 23, can't really be understated. It's
huge difference.
Huge difference. Jimmy Rafferty you mentioned in there, but he played a similar role to what you were saying. I remember it's a huge jump. So I understand.
Yeah.
So kind of moving on from your plebe year. So you had what you All-American at 3 different weights, but normally people would go from like 149, 141, 147. That's like the normal kind of progression. You went 41, 57, 49. Talk to us a little bit about that and, maybe the weight cutting struggles at 41 and then the decision to bump up to 57 and back down. Talk to us a little bit through that.
Yeah. So again, like I said, I was a little bit of a late bloomer. So I was growing quite a bit my, plebe and yuck year, freshman, sophomore year. It was a little bit of a cut my freshman year. I came in and was like, I think before we went to Beast, I was probably weighing about 140. And I came out of Beast. I think I heard Matt Kyler's story too, like, John Anderson, where you just blow up really, it's that mess hall food or something. But like blew up and I was like weighing 150 something. I was like, what in the world is going on here? Where did it go? Because I sure don't look like, I didn't have bulging biceps or anything. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. But I was able to make it my freshman year. Sophomore year was a really tough cut for me. And then I grew so much that I got to like, I was probably mid 160s, upper 160s. I felt great. And I was just practicing in the wrestling room with a couple of the guys at that weight. And, when you're 141 looking at 157 pounders, they're massive. They're like, oh man, I can't wrestle those guys. They're massive. Right. But then when I actually gained all that weight, I realized like, they don't move very fast up here. They're a little bit slow. And I was tearing them up. I was getting to it was like so easy. It's like a tree in the forest that just falls. It's like real slow and you're watching it. It was like, that's how their legs were moving. So I was like, this is like easy pickings. I could really just shoot and get to any one of their legs without any problem. So I was like, this is kind of fun. So 57 was really realistic. And I felt like I had some I had success, but that was a weird year for me. My junior year was a really, really weird year for me. I had to adjust a little bit because my feet, I could get to their legs. I was way better probably on feet than I thought I was going to be, but being on top was a little bit tougher because I think when I was at 141, I was able to use my leverage a lot more. And so, I could ride legs and like my leverage was just probably really helpful. And then when you start wrestling 157 pounders, they're a lot taller. And so like, I think riding legs was not I had to adjust a little bit there. So my feet got better, but my top probably I wasn't as effective then. And then I had a number of concussions and my weight came down throughout the year. And I remember NCAA's, my junior year, I was weighing 155. So I was actually below the weight class. So I didn't like that at all. And then I realized too, I was not as in good of shape my junior year as I was any of the other years because I didn't have to cut weight. When you cut weight, it forces you to have to do a lot of extra stuff. And I think that it just builds more mental toughness. And then it just, by nature, I was just in such good shape. So when I was 157, I felt like I wasn't where I needed to be physically. I wasn't in good enough shape. And then as my weight came off throughout the year, I was like 41's probably where I need to be. And so then it was easier to make that decision to go to 49. Mm-hmm. So.
It's crazy how that works. I look back at some of my years, like in high school where, like at the beginning of the season, that weight cut, maybe you just cut weight maybe a little bit better going to 57 the first couple of times, and your body naturally comes down a little bit more.
Yeah.
I remember when you'd balloon up and like I'd start the year at, maybe 5 or 7 pounds above the weight class. And then by the end of the year, you're 15 pounds over the day after. And you're like, wait, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah, and it was really weird. Like you see it more now. That was really kind of unheard of when I was wrestling. You didn't see people jump weights that much. I think, not sure, but I might have been one of the first ones to All-American at 3 different weight classes. Now it's no thing. You got Kyle Dake who won national title at a different weight class every year. So just wrestling has gotten so much better positionally that people can do that. I think back in the day that it just was different. And so weight cutting was an advantage to certain degrees because the technique was not as advanced. And so the style was different. It was a lot more banging and a lot more power and explosiveness. And so people were just not wanting to go up weight classes. Whereas now I think the sports change. They look at nutrition differently. They look at weight cutting differently. And I think kids are more open to going different weight classes. And I think it's a great thing, for sure. But I remember that was just unheard of when I did that. And, for me, I learned a lot that year. That was probably the worst year for me from
Sounds
a wrestling standpoint.
even through what was like a pretty challenging year from a lot of like wrestling, I guess, standpoint, you still managed to have a ton of success. And across the different weight classes, that's something that like a lot of people weren't doing at the time, and especially at West Point, with different years presenting different problems for things outside of the board. I remember actually you specifically told us early on in my cadet career, like that the things that West Point threw at you, they could be viewed as excuses, or they could also be viewed as things that that helped you. So could you just like explain a little bit about how you wrestled so consistently at such a high level within the demanding environment at West Point? Like, what did you do to kind of rise above an environment that's taken a lot out of a lot of really good, talented folks?
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably the most important thing is the mindset, right? So I mean, again, I go back to just thinking about how much I hated losing. I mean, if I ever felt like I couldn't change the results or couldn't do something different, I would have just found another sport. But that's what I liked wrestling, was like I could always find a way to get better or find a way to improve and get to a different level. And so West Point was no different. You're going to have challenges no matter where you go to school. It's just they get wrapped up in different ways. And it's just really how you handle than others. West Point's got unique challenges that may be viewed as different and more difficult than other colleges. But, I would say I didn't have the challenge of like having social life was not too terribly difficult, whereas like I imagine if you're at a Penn State or Missouri or somewhere like that, there's just a lot more distractions in that area. But all the actions, the things at West Point were wholesome. They were good. They were great. They were good distractions, but I just prioritized things differently that allowed me to keep wrestling at the very forefront of what I wanted to do. I knew that, West Point it's such an awesome place. You got just amazing people from everywhere, all walks of life, and they're so talented, academically, athletically, just emotionally, mentally. That the person that West Point just requires a certain type of person. For you to even get there is a pretty amazing achievement. And so you get there and everyone's just the best at what they're the best at, right? And so I looked across and when I was at West Point, and there's military life, you got academic life, and then you have your wrestling life. And I remember there were the kids that loved the military. They were like Sandhurst, Hua, all the way. And I mean, they were, messing with their rucksacks in the middle of the year on a Saturday. And it was like, it's amazing. And then you had the kids that were always studying. They were always studying. And so like, in a way, West Point's such a competitive place, and you're always trying to compete with your peers in different areas, whether it's the military or the academic. And it was like, I looked at that and I was not interested in trying to be the best at any of those, because I knew that if I spent my time trying to be good in those areas, I would not be able to reach my potential at wrestling. That didn't mean I didn't do the other things. I just didn't prioritize them the way that maybe other people do. So I didn't spend as much time probably academically as other kids would on the wrestling team, or militarily as other kids would on the wrestling team. And, West Point by nature, everyone is challenging you to get better and be better. But that never bothered me that I, didn't have the shiniest shoes, or I didn't have a 3.5 GPA. It never bothered me, because I knew that I could be the best at wrestling. I could be the best in that area. And so I kind of threw all my marbles in that. Was like, I'm not interested in being good or mediocre in all these facets. I'm interested in being really, really great. This is where I can leave my mark. And so that's just the mindset that I probably had. And so that's probably what allowed me to let a lot of the things roll off my back a little bit that maybe would bother other kids. That didn't distract me from what I wanted to do. I didn't view any of those things as keeping me back from being able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And what, probably again, what drove me at the core of it was really, I wanted to win. I hated losing. And so I was going to find unique ways to do that at West Point. And so a lot of unique things that you would probably do at other places that I would do. But I loved it. I love that piece of it. I enjoyed that.
Appreciate that. So kind of moving into some specific West Point, like wrestling stuff, practices. When you came into the camp, when I was in North Carolina for, a couple of years back, you talked about some tough practices and, wrestling with your brother Patrick and John Anderson and some of those tough battles. I remember specifically you got into like one practice that was like, you thought it was over and then it wasn't. And there was like sprints at the end. I'd like you to share that story because I remember just thinking about it and being like, man, John and Patrick are tough. Do you remember the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Such a good story. I remember hearing that and being like, "Oh my gosh!"
I think one of the worst things that a coach can ever do to mentally stress some kids out is like, you can wrestle really, really hard for a finite period of time. You can give your all if you know that practice is going to be an hour and a half, right? You can give your all if you know you're going to go live for 10 minutes. And then you can sprint as hard as you're going to sprint if you know that you got 5 sprints. I think the worst feeling in the world is when a coach says, all right, we might have another one. And you just never know when it's going to end, right? And that's what will break a lot of people, is not being able to know what the end time is. And so it was really effective probably because it toughened a lot of people up, but it also exposed a lot of people. And I probably was no different. I wasn't one of those guys that would break mentally and like lose it, but there's always that like feeling that would creep in. I would probably isolate myself more when things like that would happen. I'd isolate myself more and just kind of zone in and focus. And then because I was probably mentally battling with that in my head, like, this is baloney. Just freaking tell. We got 10 more. We got 2 more. Just freaking tell me so we can get it done, And I remember one of those practices, and I can't remember if it was Coach Barbee or Sammy Henson or somebody was running practice, and they started pulling those shenanigans again. And a lot of times I used to think like, it's because somebody's not practice. Somebody's being lazy in practice, and we're gonna keep doing this until somebody, gives it their all. So that used to make me mad because I always, worked hard. But I looked over there and I remember looking at Patrick and John, and they were kind of different mentally already, but they were like pumping themselves up and like ready to go. And I just remember being like, God, what is wrong with them? And they were just eating it up. And it was like the harder it got and the worse the situation was, they were like having more fun. And I remember thinking that was kind of a light bulb, that moment that went off. One, that I was like, damn, my brother Patrick is really tough. I was really proud of him in a lot of ways because he had just being below me and he never even probably got to wrestle at his normal weight because I was always right above him. But he had a hard time, but getting to see him turn into just such an animal. Him and John fed off each other. John was more naturally probably like that. And then I think Patrick just developed that out of necessity because he also hated to lose. And so he developed this unbelievable toughness, mental toughness. And I remember the whole team was probably just thinking the same way as me, just very frustrated and ready for practice to be done. And it was just like, those 2 kids were like, they were like kids at a candy store. They were just like, I just remember thinking like, there's something wrong with them. But it was attractive in a way. It was like, okay, all right, I can get behind that. And it wasn't just that, whether it was the ski slope, running up the ski slope or lifting, it just became a mindset that they had that they started to like demonstrate. And I think people started to notice that. And it was like, that's a leader. That's because it wasn't any less hard for them than it was for us. It was just their attitude and the way they approached it that was just so drastically different than everyone else. And I remember thinking, that's special. That's very unique. You don't see that.
My plebe year, I was Patrick was my partner, and I remember like my hardest practice. And I may have said it on here before, I can't remember, but Chuck had like the clock going, and we assumed that there was like, you know, probably like 20 minutes left in practice, and it was just like a running clock, and it was like drill kind of matches where it's like real tough, and it just kept going for like an hour, like way longer. And I just remember, and I tell that story to people, and I'm like, yeah, like it would have been one thing if I was going with somebody else, but I was going with Patrick. So like there was no letdown of intensity like at all. And I just remember being so mad during that like 40-minute to where like I thought it was 20 minutes. Because it was, you know, let's say it was a 2-hour practice and you're like, okay, there's probably 20 minutes here. Well, it turned into like a 3-hour practice and they just like let it go on. I just remember when I tell that story, I'm like, you don't understand. I was with Patrick this time. Like, it wasn't like I was like, I had to deal with another wrestler. Like, okay, we can slack off a little bit. And,
yeah, it's almost like they get more energy as that goes, you know, it's like they feed off of that. Like, you know, some people, when they get taken into the deep waters, start to panic a little bit and, you know, start to flail. And it's almost like they revel in that. And you started seeing that in the way they would win matches. And I remember being like, you know, it got to the point where it was like, if they were down 5 points in the third period, it's like, oh, they got this. This is nothing. And they would literally, they'd be down 5-6 points and they would break the guy and win by 7 or 8. Because it would be like, they'd take him down, let him up, take him down, let him up. And the guy would just be laying there. And then they would just like throw him on their back, get back points, whatever. It was just like, it was something that they developed such confidence in being able to wrestle really hard the entire match, but know that once it got to that third period, that the other guy just didn't have anything left. And then that's when they really kind of took off.
Chandler,
sorry.
this topic kind of reminds me of that CrossFit event in the Final Five where like Castro this year decided to like, oh no, you're midway through the event, not halfway through. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I tested that one, and I know folks were surprised because Dave told me to turn back around. I said yes, sir, because it's exactly like what Phil was mentioning. We've done this before. You know, all of us have had probably hundreds of practices where you think it's done at a certain point, or you know, it's one more takedown, or it's always one more. Or Coach Heskett even had a thing as part of like his mentality. He's trying to give to the program a +1, right? And so that would always come up in everything we did: +1 minute, +1 takedown, +1 more hill sprint. A lot of good memories from that on my end. But for you specifically, Phil, for your cadet years, I know you mentioned some really good memories you just had there within the practice room. What was your overall best memory of being a cadet?
Man, honestly, the whole experience. I was probably a rare person there. I loved West Point. Like, I really did. There were some tough moments, sure, but I really, truly loved the experience. I loved the people there, my classmates. My mentors were just incredible, top-notch people. I mean, y'all had, I call him Lieutenant Colonel Arredondo. He was Captain Arredondo when I was a cadet there. And just the quality of people. It's just one of those places that even if you didn't want to get better at being a person, or being a leader, you can't help it. You're just surrounded by just really good people. And, you know, in today's day and age, I think it's tough. You got to go find those people. Whereas at West Point, they were coming to you. Everyone was trying to invest in you. And so just the whole experience was just, I mean, I know it sounds really weird and cheesy, but I missed it the day I left. I was missing it. I missed having my brother Patrick there. And then when William and Brian would come up on the weekends from prep school, it just was such a great experience for me. Life was so simple. I think I had great perspective on what really mattered. I didn't get hung up on a lot of those details that probably make people frustrated with the experience at West Point, because at the end of the day, I knew what really mattered was just being around really good people, learning how to be a good leader, getting experiences that other people would never in their wildest dreams be able to have. And I was getting them every day. And I think I just really appreciated it. I was extremely grateful for that opportunity. And I never took that for granted. And so I think people struggle at West Point or go through these ups and downs when they lose sight of that. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, I never did. And so I loved every bit of it. I still have dreams about being there, and I miss it, and I miss the people. Just nowhere else, no other time in your life are you going to be surrounded by so many capable people. That doesn't mean everyone there is great. That doesn't mean every mentor or every teacher you're going to have is great. But the vast majority of people there are there because they care, because they want to be better. They know where they're going in life. They have focus and direction. They love challenges. Nowhere are you going to be around that many people. And if you can go through your 4 years at West Point and come out and not having become a better person, then I just think that's impossible. They won't let you. Everyone is pouring into you. And it's just such a great feeling when you know that you have all that just at the tips of your fingers. And so you can make the most of it. And it's just, yeah. So one special moment, I don't think I can pinpoint one, but I have probably a lot of little ones tied up in probably mostly with my brother, Patrick. Just being able, probably the times I had the most was when I was reflecting back on just how incredible. I mean, like there were times where I was just like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I get to be a part of this. Being from Nashville, Tennessee, not having really anyone in my immediate family in the military, it was just very different, but getting to be a part of something special, like that's just really neat. So yeah, probably all those.
I remember a lot of people probably don't know this, Chandler, you probably don't know, but I came up to Ring Weekend with Willie. Me and Willie were his dates. And
that's right.
I remember one thing distinctly the first night, because we were sleeping in your barracks room, which I don't know, we're even allowed to? I don't know if that's like a
probably
thing.
Not. I broke some rules.
Area, but Patrick was over, and then like last minute, Patrick like went on pass for the weekend. And we're like, "You're gonna use pass for this?" He's like, "I want to sleep over." So Patrick used one of his passes as a cow. It wasn't even going anywhere. It was staying in the barracks, but just so he could like hang out with us all that night. That was like my first vivid memory of West Point, because I was at prep school, and every other visit before then was up at, was as like as a recruit or things like that. And this was early on prep school years. So I always remember that. But yeah, that was a fun weekend.
Yeah. Just think about that, man. Somebody's willing to blow a pass just to spend more time just in a better, more intimate setting where you can have fun. That's
Patrick.
Yeah. But I think my whole experience was full of people like that. And I think it magnifies your strengths. It gives you the opportunity to really grow in the areas that you could be, that, everyone's going to have their things that they're good at or not good at. And I think it just allows people to blossom. If you take advantage of the things there. I honestly could never say enough good things about the place and the people. And I said that when I was there. And so it wasn't one of those things that was like, I didn't appreciate West Point until I left. It's like, dude, I loved every bit of it.
It's funny to say that. So kind of transition, after that, you went into the world-class athlete program at WCAP. Kind of talk about that transition. You branched infantry. elected to go that route
Mm-hmm.
still as an infantry officer, but a very different path. Talk about that transition a little bit.
Yeah. So, man, probably one of the harder decisions I've ever had to make. Going to West Point wasn't as hard as I think people. I know it wasn't hard for me. Choosing what I wanted to do after I graduated, because I did branch infantry. That's what I wanted to do. Um, Deciding to do the World Class Athlete was hard because a part of me longed to be with soldiers, longed to get that experience that you hear about from your mentors and from everyone else. And, I learned to love, I probably went to West Point not having a love for the military or love being in the military. It just was like, yeah, that'll be cool. But it wasn't like, I love the military. I can't wait to be in the Army. I can't wait to lead troops. Like that never crossed my mind. But as I was there, you learn all these things and you get to see different people and hear different experiences. Then it just grows on you. Just think, man, what an incredible opportunity to be able to do what we get to do when we graduate, whether it's infantry or military police or field artillery, whatever it is, whatever you get into, like to be able to come out and be a part of an organization like the Army and get to lead troops. It's incredible. And so it grew on me while I was there. And so having to decide between infantry and WCAP was extremely difficult. But I think at the end of the day, what I kept coming back to was the Army has given me an opportunity to chase my dreams. And I had a number of people believed in me and classmates that were like, you'd be stupid not to do this. They were, instead of being jealous or saying like, you didn't join to go wrestle, you should be, you should do the Army thing. Like they were genuinely wanted me to do it. And so I think at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion that for me, had this incredible opportunity that the Army gives to people that they feel like can be of value doing that. And so that's kind of how I came to grips with letting go of maybe the traditional route as an infantry officer and doing this. And it was really particularly hard when Patrick graduated and he started doing that, and then he deployed to Iraq. And that was probably a big challenge for me when I was training at the Olympic Training Center was, when you get to that level, Chandler, you probably experience this now. When you start competing at a high level on something, it becomes extremely selfish. And that's very unnatural for me, and then unnatural for, that environment that we grew up in at West Point, where they're teaching you how to be a leader, how to think about others and how to put others' needs in front of your own. And it's easy. You can do that on a team sport. You can do that at college, you got that environment, but when you're in WCAP, it's all about you. It's a very different mindset. And so I struggled with that probably. But to be the best, that's just the mindset that I think you have to have a little bit. And so whatever successes I didn't have was probably because that was one of my biggest struggles, was learning how to just immerse myself into myself and just be all about myself all the time. And it can be off-putting if people don't know how to balance that, or at least portray themselves not in that way. But I think when you get down to it, really, really, really successful people in individual sports particularly are so immersed in every little detail about their life and the things that they need to get to the next level and be successful. It just requires so much time and energy on you, and I didn't like that. And so that was really particularly hard when I saw Patrick and then, the other teammates going out and doing things and getting to be leaders. And it just was like, here I am focused on myself and my wrestling. And it just was hard for me to wrap my head around that. But I got to do what I love. I got to reach probably levels and learn more about myself and those things than I ever would have. I think I had more success at West Point having all those distractions than when I got to a place like Colorado Springs and had no distractions. All I was supposed to do was wrestle. That was really hard for me. So it was a very different experience. I loved it. I ended up learning to love it a lot more and kind of found that right balance that I needed. And then I got married and started having kids, and I think that even helped me put perspective on it. But yeah, it was a very different world, very different counter to what's instilled in us at West Point. So you just have to be very cautious about that and know how to balance that.
Definitely empathize with that. Like the higher up you get, you gotta continue to find the smaller things, because everyone's doing the big things, right? And the smaller things often involve asking more time, more sacrifices for yourself. And then as someone who's looking out for other people, as a husband, as a father, as a teammate, like that gets harder and harder to do. And I know you said that when you were deciding to go and take this route of joining WCAP, you had some good support from your classmates, and you kind of like leaned on them. And I feel like I lean on my classmates and my friends from school a lot for like just kind of making sure my head's on straight. I'm not married or anything like that. But do you still keep up with those classmates? Like, how has that relationship with them evolved? And I know you mentioned how much you loved West Point. Like, how much of those relationships outside of your familial ones have you continued to carry with you as you've gone forward into your adult life?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I probably have done as great of a job as I wish. I think that's always something I think about. I think about my classmates all the time. I think about my wrestling teammates all the time. My class and the years above me and the years below me. I think about them random times during the day. You know, but do I actually stay connected with them? No, it's hard. Again, that's why West Point was so special. It's like you get so many people all in one area. It's easy to do that, but then they all scatter, and then you go out and you have different networks and that you become a part of in the business world or in whatever it is. And so it gets to be really challenging. But what I appreciate the most about my classmates, about my teammates, is when we do connect. It's man, it just feels so good. It brings back so much good memories, and you realize like those are the moments that you kind of like, man, that was just such a special time that you can't duplicate that. And you pick up where you left off. It's like literally I could pick up the phone and probably call Doug Reynolds or TJ or Joe Forsman or Ty Reedy. And literally we'd be talking like it was there would be no awkward silence. There'd be no awkwardness about any of it. It would be like, I'd be smiling. It would just be incredible. So, the moments I do get to stay in touch with them, they're very special, but it gets to be very hard. And so, yeah, so not as good as I would like, but I think everybody probably goes through that. It's just life gets busy. But really, honestly and truly, this is why I think what you guys are doing, you and Jordan specifically, Brian, it's creating an avenue for people to kind of reconnect back to the program, get to listen to stories from people maybe that weren't there when we were there, but getting to listen to that, it just floods your memories with those kind of things that set it apart and makes you just think about those classmates again and think about teammates, and it just reminds you how cool this is. So again, I kind of mentioned earlier, I went on a little bit of a binge listening to the BHAW radio over Thanksgiving weekend, and it was dangerous. I was like, man, I don't got this amount of time to spend on podcasts with all my kids and all the other things. So I got to be careful that I don't, overdo this here, but it was really cool. I had my headphones on and I was like doing yard work. I was probably so inefficient because I was just sitting there. I was like so immersed. I was like, this is great.
Well, glad you appreciate that. But yeah, I'm going to ask you after this, once this podcast is live, that you need to text it out to all your classmates, and that way they can take a listen. You guys can maybe catch up over text message. I know my classmates, we've reconnected. We have like a USMA 2009 wrestlers group text now.
That's awesome.
Whenever somebody's like has a baby or something like that, like I'll screenshot it on social media and send it to them. And that way we can like reconnect or share a funny memory. And
yeah, you got to do that. I mean, I think that's it's hard to do. Once you do it, you just feel you appreciate it. Like Tyree has probably been my just a phenomenal leader. He's gotten our class kind of back together since you guys have been doing this, and people on it pulls everyone around them in because they want to hear, they want to, you know, so I think it's really helpful for just the person that have been part of the West Point wrestling.
Yeah. Breaking up a little bit, but I think I got the gist of it there. So kind of moving on from that, before we wrap things up, kind of want to see like what you're up to these days. Are you still involved in wrestling? I imagine so, since you have 25 kids. Patrick's got 25 kids. You got a little army. You got a little army of future wrestlers ahead. What are you up to these days?
Yeah, so living. My brother keeps me updated on all things wrestling. So is my internet slowing down here?
Kind of, yeah, it's going a little choppy. Just the last like 20 seconds or so.
Okay. If I need too many people are probably jumping on. I can reconnect to different Wi-Fi if you guys need me to. But just in, I stay on the outside probably now more. And just I love keeping up with Army wrestling through William. And then Patrick's head coach at my old high school with my dad. And my dad had been the head coach for a number of years and turned the program over this year to Patrick. And it's just been really cool watching him get to take it now. And, I got my brother-in-law is Patrick Marchetti. So he married my sister Claire. And so, it's fun to have that. I get to see Patrick all the time. He works with me. And then my sister Rose is engaged to Luke Hoxton. So he's a recent grad going through IOBC. And so he's going to be part of the family soon. So we give him a little bit of a hard time, not too bad. But so it's nice. It's like I'm still always around it, just on the outside. So, but I got my kids, and I've been helping on the little kids wrestling program for Patrick's high school, and so I do that as much. But it's it's amazing how much I realize like it's really tough to teach a second grader how to do a lot of those things. It's like you got to dumb it down. And you realize like, man, I got to get better at coaching these things, and but it's been fun doing that, and then watching my kids kind of so my kids actually mirror my family's all the way to almost the very end. So the first three of my kids are boys, and so they remind me a lot of me, Patrick, and William. They're always horse playing, rough housing, and wrestling everywhere. Hardwood floors, carpet. Luckily, they're not big enough to where they're really breaking things, although they have done that a few times. And I've tried to tell my wife, I was like, listen, you're going to have to temper your expectations. We can't have anything nice in the house because it's just going to get broken. But I love watching them. I wish they probably weren't as competitive as they are, because they again remind me probably of the way we are. It just gets to be a little crazy. But I have some old mats that I used when I was training at the Olympic Training Center that I pull out every winter, and I put it in the middle of we got a big room. And so it's like I just pull it out, lay it out, and the kids just go wild on it and wrestle. And so I haven't done a lot of technique with them yet, just because there's no need to. It's more just developing a love for the sport and just enjoying rolling around and grappling. But
how many of your kids do you think will end up going to the academy in wrestling? I guess I should say that first. Your family?
Oh man, if I could, I wish I could say all of them. Even the girls, because I think the girls will be just as tough too. Remind me of my sisters. My oldest son's unfortunately, he's got type 1 diabetes. And so like, as selfish as that sounds, when he was diagnosed right before his second birthday, like the first thing that crossed my mind was like, dang it, I think that disqualifies him from West Point. And it may, as they get older, it might not be the right fit for them. West Point's not the right fit for everybody, but I know how incredible the place is and how much it can help, you just develop and become a good person and good leader. And so like, I want that for my kids. It's also free. I mean, that helps, so I always had this vision of my kids getting to do what me and Patrick and William got to do, which was go be a part of the West Point wrestling community and go through a place like that. And we'll see, maybe they'll have, they all want to, even my oldest one, even though he knows that he's not allowed to, he wouldn't be able to go right now with his diabetes. His backup plan is to play football at Notre Dame.
Decent backup plan.
Yes, his backup plan is to go play football at Notre Dame. He hadn't heard the Rudy story yet, B-Row, so haven't introduced him to that yet. But he's a huge fan. I have told him also because I don't think he's going to be very big. He'll probably be like me, 149 pounder, full strength. But yeah, so we'll see. But they do love West Point. They love Army. It helps with William being up there and all his girls and boys get to wear all the cool Army gear that they have, and so it makes them a little jealous. So
what's the over under? This is the impromptu question. It's not in the Google Doc. But of your 8 kids, and I don't know if you're planning to have more, if that's in the cards, but how many of your kids would have to go to West Point for you to move the family up there?
Oh man.
Thought about that. Like if there's 4 there, like let's say there's 4 there, and like the other 4 maybe like thinking, could that be in the works, maybe 10 years down the line?
I would have to say 0 chance, only because if I moved up there, I would probably be way too immersed I'd probably be wearing my uniform again, sneaking on post, checking in on things, like, I'm telling you, like I truly love and miss the place more than anyone. I mean, I don't talk about it as much because I think about it more than anything, but, in another life, I'd move back up there and I would be working in Arvin Gym if they let me, just to be around cadets and be around it and be around the place. It's just incredible. But, so I think I would just have to know that if I ever moved up there, I would probably be way overbearing. And so to protect myself and embarrassing the kids and being that crazy kid, the guy that just won't let it go, I have to put up literally physical barriers in the form of states. So I'll probably have to stay here in Nashville and just enjoy it from afar. But I bet I'll bet somebody ends up there.
I would bet there are a lot of contenders. I didn't know that about Luke Hodson, and I know between Pat and then I wrestled with Pat and his younger brother Mark.
Yeah,
all are related to the Dunning family as well.
Yeah, Whit.
Your father and uncle, both coaching against each other. Are there any like family wrestle-offs or those things happen ever in like Thanksgiving? And are there any of those coming up or anything like that anymore? Do you guys still ever?
Impromptus, yes. Now they take the shape of standing straight and doing some Russian ties because that's the old man. That's the lazy wrestling, right? A couple years ago, kind of, I still have it. I mean, I think it never leaves you. I got an itch, like talking to you guys right now, like my body temperature is lowered and I've been cold since I've been talking to you just because my adrenaline's pumping. But so I rolled with Patrick a couple years back and he's got some crazy freak strength and he only got better as he got older and he about broke my neck again. And so I was like, listen, I can't wrestle you. You're crazy. And you're not reacting the way I need you to react to when I wrestle you. I'm a little bit of a prima donna when I wrestle. But I had to quit wrestling live with him because he was too much adrenaline pumping through his veins still. But I can still pull it back together if I needed to. Just need to give me a couple of weeks, get my back into shape. getting old.
I feel that. Whew. You got what, 4 years on me.
Yeah, I know.
As I'm sitting here,
I'm far enough away that I wouldn't do it like right now, but I always maintain a close distance that if I need to, I'll get it back in gear.
You can make 149 if it needed you to.
Whew, I would. Take me a little bit to get there, but yes.
What are you weighing right now? Like 165? You look a little trimmer.
Yeah, probably muscle atrophy. But yeah, probably 163, 64, 65. So within striking range for sure. A couple of decent cuts and I'll be there.
That's a few days for you, you know.
I guess Midlands 2021. It was supposed to be Midlands 2020. I was going to make my comeback, you know, but
nice.
Damn, 2020 got us. But
where are you now, B-Row?
Next year. What?
I said, where are you now?
I was really going to do it. I was not maybe going to be, it was probably not going to be the best decision of my life, but I was like, you know what? I want to enter in Midlands when I'm 35 years old.
Okay.
So
what weight class did you go on?
74.
Okay. All right.
I bulked up a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll be bringing those guns out here.
Man, I saw. I can't see that.
So before we head out, who would you want to hear on the show? This is the last question. Who do you want to hear? Now we're getting kind of like we've already done. You know, this is the 26th one. So we've heard from a lot of different people. Who do you want to hear, though, Phil?
Truthfully, I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's a tough one. I would say I like to hear classes speak. So not just one individual. I like to hear the banter back and forth between multiple people. So when you've had brothers on and you've had you had our class on, I think that's a really cool setup. So I think getting a couple classes back and talk about the different challenges that they maybe faced that were unique, whether it was with the Army or with the West Point at the time or the wrestling program. I like to get multiple perspectives. So yeah, that, and then I just say, I'm trying to think. Trying to think of some individuals. Matt Ross was one. He graduated before I got there, but he actually Kevin. He hosted Kevin Ward on the recruiting trip, and he has he had a probably a really good college career, battled through a bunch of different things, and so I remember following his career, him and Maurice Worthy, when I was a senior in high school and they were seniors. But then the military side of it was, he had some probably pretty cool. And then I got to, when we were at the camp, I got to meet his son, which was just reminded me how old we are now. So yeah, it was probably one that I the military side. What's that?
His son's a plebe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No kidding. All right. Just made me feel more older. Yeah. That's an individual I was, pretty neat. I think following people's success afterwards is fun, whether it's in the military or the, private world. It's really cool to kind of hear how the lessons that they learned at West Point and on the wrestling team maybe carried over. So you haven't gone wrong yet, though. So I trust you and Jordan's instincts on who to pick. I'm not gonna lie. I was thinking about it. Maybe they forgot I wrestled there. I don't know. I haven't heard from them.
Well, this is
kind of old now, though. So
you want to pull out all the big guns initially, and like all the big names aren't available later on. So Jordan and I were like, we're gonna wait for Phil, and then like
whatever.
The break. We didn't plan to take the break in December, but Jordan having his baby, and he's kind of a prima donna too. I mean, you're like, wait, you had a baby and you can't do this podcast for a month? Like, come on.
The show must go on.
It was a good little time away. Plus, everybody for people to catch up and watch these episodes, get all caught up. You can't be like me, where I have nothing else going on, where I just listen to these, all day, on repeat.
No, that's great. You guys are doing a really good job.
Jordan listens to them all and edits them. I can't hear myself do this. I haven't listened to one episode. It's just awkward. But I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming on the show too. This was a lot of fun. It was one of the more enjoyable episodes I've been a part of. And Chandler, appreciate you hopping on and contributing.
Chandler, I'm following you in the distance, man. You're another one of those guys that I quietly follow, and it's been really cool to see you have a lot of success. And yeah, man, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but super proud of all your accomplishments, man. And keep leading the way. Doing really good. Really enjoy.
You all left some massive shoes to fill in, and I'm glad that I got a chance to hang out and talk. Because again, as a cadet, like you have probably the best resume in Army wrestling history, and it's cool for me to even have a chance to talk to you. So I'm glad that you think I'm doing a good job, and hope I can continue to meet the standard that you set on the mats, off the mats, husband, father, across the board. Folks like you are what make being an Army wrestler such an awesome experience, and like a credential almost, just being a part of a group that's associated with people like yourself. So thanks for being you. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Keep up doing. You guys are doing a really good job. And again, like I said, I think it's a great way to bring people back in. Once you suck them in, it's like you just get that feeling all over again. It's hard to leave. So thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on. I'll see you, Phil.
See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the BHAW Radio Show. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. If there's something you'd like to hear on a future show, reach out to us on any of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you can reach us at email, bhaw.radio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, go Army, be Navy.